So listen, Allan, thanks so much for joining us. And you've had a fabulous career, and I think it's important that you share that information with us. As you think back, what was your first introduction to echocardiography?
I would say that my first introduction was at McGill University, where I was always interested in echo, and I saw M-mode representation of echo, and obviously expanded. Then I moved from McGill to Ottawa, and I saw the exposure of echo. And then I learned a lot at the Mayo Clinic, where color flow Doppler was coming at the big machines. The physiology was just growing, and that was probably my first exposure.
When you said at McGill and then Ottawa, were you medical school then, medical residency? What were you doing?
So basically, I grew up in Montreal, and I went to McGill University for med school.
Right.
And then I went to Toronto, and then back to McGill, and then Ottawa, where I did cardiology. And then I did a research echo fellowship at the Mayo Clinic, and then I came to Cleveland Clinic.
Yeah, that's wild. So you've had an incredible career there of great institutions. Thinking back on that period of time, you mentioned A-mode. Most people are somewhat familiar with A-mode, but you mentioned that. What technical developments did you see go on, and how were you involved in those?
Okay, so I think first of all, color flow was a big thing. The machines, the LOCA machine was a massive machine. But for the first time, you can see, valve regurgitation. And then I was very fortunate at Mayo Clinic. I worked with Liv Hatley. And if I can tell you a little quick anecdote, so when I came as a Canadian Heart Foundation Fellow to Mayo Clinic, I didn't have a project. And there was a research fellow from Switzerland, Tom Lucier, actually was the editor of European Heart Journal and future, I think, president of ASE. He was there working with Dr. Hatley on amyloid. And his visa ran out. And all of a sudden he hands me 100 cases of amyloid, and now you work with this famous person, Liv Hatley, sort of the mother of diastology. So I learned all about hemodynamics, diastology, pericardiology, and that was my first take of echo, Doppler, and I brought that back to Cleveland.
That's wild. I mean, what a unique experience. I mean, all of us that have had a chance to know Liv and to work with her, it was incredible. And I'm sure for you it was like speed learning, wasn't it?
No, when she was there, it was so novel, some of the concepts. She was one of the first people to do simultaneous Doppler hemodynamic type information, and all the senior Mayo Clinic doctors, as Tajik and Seward and Dr. O, Candiria, everybody's taking notes, exactly what she's saying. Respiratory variation, inflows, and interventricular dependence, all novel concepts for most of the people.
Yeah, she is brilliant, and you can learn so much by osmosis, almost being around her. What if you think about your career? Okay, what do you think are the important milestones that you've seen in echo?
Well, first of all, an important part of my career was actually based from the ASE. When I was a young staff, I came to one of the ASE meetings, and I saw that that you can use T to visualize the left atrial appendage. And I took that back to Cleveland, and I was rounding with Dr. Grimm. He was a fellow at that time on a patient that needed cardioversion.
Right.
And from that meeting, from the ASC meeting, I said, why don't we just visualize the appendage, see if there's a thrombus, and cardiovert the patient? So we basically we did these projects on LA appendage and published in the England Journal of Medicine. So to me, that was an important aspect of how we used things from this type of meeting, ASC, to change practice, and it has changed practice. All the cardioversions are often done by T. Other milestones with echo, obviously, would be the hemodynamics is growing, miniaturization. We went from a big LOCA machine to a much more modular machine to handheld. That would be a big thing. 3D really changed the landscape on valves. Intervention echo for structural imaging is really grown. Artificial intelligence, which you know a lot about, has grown as well. So these are some of the big milestones over the years.
Yeah, no, it's been an exciting development. So you mentioned the ASE. How did you first get involved with the ASE?
Probably from when I was at the Mayo Clinic, I knew that there was an important society to join, and I joined as a fellow. And then when I became a staff, I went to those meetings, and I learned a lot as going to see some of the sessions.
What, as you think back about your career and your involvement with, parallel involvement with the ASE, what has it meant to you, both professionally and personally?
Well, as a society, it's really helped me grow. I mean, I started off, attending the sessions, and then I got involved with committee work, task forces, chairing some of the guidelines committee and IRT, and eventually, I got on to the executive and presidency, and so basically it's really helped shape my career. Personally, it's a great networking society. Last night we had the President's Dinner, and everybody has been a president or current president. We learn a lot from each other. So it's been a great society professionally and personally. It's sort of my home. I'm also involved with other societies, ACC, but definitely ASE is my home and for personal and professionally.
No, yeah, it's a good way of putting it. So you were the 27th president of the American Society of Echo, and during your presidency, and I did have a chance to read your blue pages, and where you were the tweeting president, but so we'll come back to that in just a second. You had some interesting goals. So what went on during your presidency that you think is is very important for the society and what you learned a lot from?
So as you know, the ASE presidency is 1 year, so you have to try to accomplish a lot. One of my main goals was I saw the importance of registries. ACC has a registry and some other societies have registries. So we had the concept that we would form an image guide echo registry in conjunction with the Nuclear Society. So that was one important objective, and we got that started, and it's still ongoing. The other key point was echo is very case-based. So we started the case journal in conjunction with the JACE journal. So case was started. Also, I realized that as an ASE president, you're really an ambassador, and an international ambassador. So I did push a lot for the international alliances, and that has grown over the years. Those are some of the main accomplishments I did over my year.
Yeah, I mean, you had some really, in your reading your presidential departure message, that you had 4 goals, and I thought the first one was, I mean, they were all important, but you did really attract all users of ultrasound and the international presence. You got a chance to travel internationally as president and attend various meetings, and then and have colleagues come here. What are your, that must have been very meaningful. I know it was for me.
Definitely. So when I looked at it, looking back, the international travel fortunately was before the COVID era. I was able to do that. It was very informative. You made a lot of good friends with the Europeans and the Japanese. So as I said, you're like an ambassador. You're learning from them. You're liaison with them, and trying to bring them in to work with the ASE. A lot of cooperation over the years, and you see it even at this meeting today. There's a whole contingent from Europe and Japan, from Brazil. Echo is global, and I think ASE is probably the home for a lot of these international leaders. And
you did, if I'm not mistaken, were you part of starting the WASE study, the World Alliance Societies of Echocardiography, that study?
I'm not sure if I was directly involved, but I did help with bringing in some of those alliance partners that I think Roberto Lang and Federico Ashra were mainly involved. But the alliance partners allowed them to get all these studies from South America, from Europe, and Asia. So that was the beginning.
That's fabulous. Tell me a little bit more about the ASE image-guided echo registry, because you mentioned that as standing out.
The image echo guide registry was in conjunction with the ASNAC Society. They had a registry. So we wanted to form this national registry that different labs all around the country could send primarily reports
Right.
To this registry and have different modules for transthoracic, T, intraoperative, pediatric, to start with, stress echo. And right now there's over 400,000 reports. It's a very gradual opportunity, getting buy-in from the different hospitals. It's quite hard because each hospital wants to keep their own data, but I think echo is national, it's universal. If everybody could be sending their reports and perhaps images,
Right.
this would be a great thing, and you can have a national database where for quality, for research, this could be the gold standard. Similar to an STS for the surgeons,
Right.
NCDR for ACC. So I look at it as a startup. You're trying to build on this, get support from hospitals, get support from industry, but this could be a future standard for imaging.
Yeah, I mean, it's important because of obviously you could have cultural differences, and I don't mean cultural, but people in Japan might have different size, findings compared to somebody in the United States and things like that. It's really important.
Also for quality, each lab has their own quality control, but if you had a national standard, how does, let's say, Cleveland Clinic stack up versus Mayo Clinic or Stanford?
Right.
So there could be a national comparison. Also, working with IAC, this may be a standard for each lab, whether they're in the registry or they're meeting certain quality metrics.
Let me ask you too, and all of that, I mean, you had a really interesting presidency. I was going to transition, but it brought me back to you were called the tweeting president. Tell me, were you were social media savvy early on?
Well, early on, I realized that the messaging is very important. And I was often tweeting about the successes of the ASE, some of the initiatives, some of the meetings. But I had competition that year. Obviously, there was another president that took to the tweeting, so it was a competition who was the more informative tweeting president. So, but I think it's that Twitter or other social media is very, very important for the ASE. Now they're doing journal clubs. There's a lot of educational content. So I think I'm considered an ASE Twitter champion. So even at this meeting, some of the important sessions were putting some of the information out. But I was competing with the former president.
Are you talking about the gourmet tweeting president?
Exactly.
I thought if I saw one more meal, I was going to say,
he got kicked off the Twitter. I'm still on.
That's great. And you know what it is? It is a tremendous form of social connectivity, and I think educational-wise, and the Journal Club is really quite interesting. Let me ask you to put on, because you've had a really interesting career. Thinking back to it when you mentioned A-mode, put on your futuristic hat. Where do you think we're going to be with echo and ultrasound in 5 to 10 years, or need to be?
I think echo is always going to be the mainstay of multimodality imaging. Currently, multimodality imaging is very popular. A lot of the fellows are learning CT, MRI, echo, nuclear. But echo is going to be the main aspect of this. So I think we're just going to have to see to grow on that to make sure that we're very relevant compared to MRI. I think AI is going to be very, very important. I just came back from a diastology working group for a new guideline. AI is going to be very important for that. There's work on ChatGPT, for doctors' offices, but recognizing images, perhaps from the images you can say that this is HFpEF. Diastology algorithms, AI is going to be very important to tell you this is grade 2 diastolic function, elevated filling pressure. Another area would be miniaturization. The handhelds are getting smaller. I think we know that this is, the imaging stethoscope, and I think that's get even stronger. When we think about stethoscopes, we're listening to heart sounds and murmurs. That's a little bit old-fashioned from the days of Osler. But now I think handheld echo or miniaturization is going to be part of a daily exam and examining the patient. You're just going to do a quick little ultrasound, a focused ultrasound. That would be one aspect. 3D is going to grow, and all the structural heart disease, whether it's transesophageal echo or 4D ICE, is going to play a major role as well. A lot of the hemodynamics may grow as well.
Yeah, I mean, tremendous excitement. I think you're exactly right. But you've had a very interesting career. Certainly made tremendous contributions to the field and to the society. Do you have any noteworthy sort of memories to think about? And what I mean by that, events that you've been involved in, could have been from early days or recent days, people that you've had experience. You've already mentioned Liv, and I think that was great, and experiences. Just as you think back on your career.
I would say, working at the Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic has really helped shape me. My mentors, and we mentioned Liv Halley, but Jamil Tajik, Jim Seward, and when I came to JO, and when I came to Cleveland, Bill Stewart, sort of founded intraoperative echo, Jim Thomas, hemodynamic specialist and diastology, Rick Grimm, Brian Griffin, all helped. I would say the main aspect would be the appendage, looking at the appendage with T, looking at pulmonary veins. I seem to follow electrophysiology protocols because the appendage now with the left atrial appendage occluders, pulmonary vein isolation would be important as well. And then I've morphed also into the to pericardial disease. I didn't mention that. I learned that from the ASE. Harvey Feigenbaum, the first paper was on pericardial fusion, and now I'm involved with leading probably the largest pericardial center in the country, where you can do advanced imaging, MRI, echo, strain for diagnostic, and now you have therapeutics. They have biologics that help treat this. For transient constriction or recurrent pericarditis.
Yeah, no, I think that's a dramatic development, and you're to be complimented, you and the clinic, for developing a pericardial center, because I know you've been involved in a patient that I peripherally knew who was really incapacitated with recurrent pericarditis, and that's a tremendous contribution.
And don't forget, echo is extremely important, for these. To tease out these conditions, because they come in with heart failure, and echo is often the way how you differentiate the constriction versus the restriction, whether it's tricuspid regurgitation and RV dysfunction. So these are a lot of referrals, and you're trying to sort out the best diagnostic modality and also the best therapeutics for this patient.
You've obtained a lot of rewards, I know personally, and I know that recently you were given the ASE Mentoring Award. Mentoring's important, but to get the award, it means you've been recognized and have done it professionally. What does mentoring mean to you? I don't mean the definition, but what you've gotten, because you're giving of yourself, but you're getting also.
Right. So to me, it's a very important honor to receive something like this. Over the years, I'm very happy to see the younger folks, the younger members, the early career members do well. A lot of people come to me for advice, future presidents, a leadership academy, and I give solid advice. And yesterday I was fortunate to give a little speech about this, and I developed different rules, for these people, and but it's very fulfilling, and to see all the people in the audience that were former mentees, some people from Cleveland Clinic came all the way to hear this acceptance of this award. So it's very personal, and makes me feel really good. You can get all the other awards, but this is a very particular one.
No, I think it's very meaningful. And finally, in your presidential address, you started out with spinning and spinning classes and things like that. And I know personally I know that you grew up playing ice hockey. So just finish up telling me a little bit about what do you do with ice hockey now at your advanced age?
Well, as I mentioned, I started playing very young, and played throughout my whole life, and I was one level before getting, drafted. You get drafted in the junior level, so I was one level below. But then I figured I'll use my head and go to medical school. So currently, I'm on a over 50 men's league, and I'm considered the ringer, the Canadian ringer, that scores a lot of goals. So there's always a fight with me and my wife, time to hang it up or not, but I'm still a good player. I'm a natural scorer. Just have to make sure I do well. Now when I come home, I tell my wife, I have good news and bad news. And she said, what's the good news? The good news, I scored a hat trick, 3 goals. What's the bad news? I can't move my back. But I'm going to keep it up as long as I can. It's great exercise, and I do that once a week and train for that all year. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's fabulous. And you've got all your teeth, I can see.
I got all my teeth. I got all my body parts intact.
They work.
They all work.
Listen, Allan, you've made tremendous contributions to the field of echo. I mean that sincerely, and certainly to ASE. So we appreciate you spending time with us.
My pleasure.